When human skin is breached by a sharp laceration, the resulting void fills within minutes. Blood rushes into the space, coagulates, and descends into a chaotic, dark web known as a hematoma. This clot acts strictly as a temporary plug. From the moment of injury, the tissue transitions into an active biological construction site. Repairing the physical defect demands two simultaneous, anatomically distinct biological operations. The first operation is epithelialization. This is a rapid horizontal movement of surface cells designed to quickly seal the breach against the outside environment. The second operation is granulation. This is a much slower vertical process that works from the bottom up to rebuild the deep structural foundation of the dermis. To understand how the body executes this repair, we have to track the exact chronological progression. First, aggressive cellular demolition moves to a temporary vascular scaffold and finishes with a devascularized scar. The survival of the surrounding tissue depends on both vectors, the horizontal seal and the vertical scaffold, working concurrently. If they fail to coordinate, the structural deficit remains, resulting in a chronic wound or the formation of a sterile abscess. Let's examine the epidermal wound margins, 24 to 48 hours post-injury. Here, the marginal basal cells begin to physically alter. They lose their firm, anchored attachment to the underlying healthy dermis. Once detached, these fixed cells undergo rapid mitotic division, proliferating to generate a steady supply of migratory daughter cells. In this schematic, you can see these daughter cells physically crawl across the gap. They multiply continuously until they form a contiguous horizontal bridge over the exposed tissue. The surface is now successfully bridged, and the upper cells begin to keratinize. However, there is a permanent functional compromise. This newly formed epidermis permanently lacks the complex appendages of normal skin. There is zero regeneration of hair follicles, sweat glands, or sebaceous glands in this zone. While the surface seals horizontally, a completely different operation triggers vertically down inside the hematoma. This is the phase of demolition. The clotted blood is heavily infiltrated by mononuclear macrophages and disintegrating polymorphs. These incoming cells release autolytic and proteolytic enzymes. They actively digest dead tissue cells and ingest particulate matter to systematically clear the void. If these macrophages encounter foreign material that cannot be digested, such as a non-absorbable surgical suture, they fuse together, forming massive foreign body giant cells to isolate the threat. This entire demolition phase is strictly preparatory. Mechanically clearing the necrotic debris is a biological prerequisite before any new connective infrastructure can be laid down. With the debris cleared, the empty hematoma space is ready to be replaced by granulation tissue. The process begins at the wound's periphery. Solid cellular buds of endothelial cells push outward from the walls of existing damaged blood vessels. These solid buds undergo canalization. They hollow out their centers to form primitive, dead-end capillary loops. This topological map illustrates how these loops continue to grow toward the center of the wound. When they meet their neighbors, they anastomose, meaning they physically connect to form continuous, flowing vascular arcades. But this new network contains a specific structural flaw. The basement membrane is poorly formed, leaving distinct physical gaps between the individual endothelial cells. Because of these gaps, the newly formed capillary loops actively leak protein. This fluid flows directly out into the extracellular space. As the network matures, some of these capillaries acquire a smooth muscle coat and differentiate into arterioles, while others expand to form thin-walled venules. This leaky, hypervascular design functions as a precision-engineered feature. The leaked protein creates the exact chemical medium required for the next critical phase of cells, fibroblasts, to survive and operate. Following the path of the new capillary loops, fibroblasts migrate from the surrounding connective tissue deep into the center of the wound. Once inside this protein-rich fluid, the fibroblasts enlarge into elongated fibrocytes, driving the local pH to an alkaline state. These fibrocytes execute their primary function, synthesizing and secreting an extracellular molecule called tropocollagen. Tropocollagen is built primarily from a specific sequence of amino acids, heavily dominated by hydroxyproline, proline, and glycine. This flowchart tracks the molecular assembly line. First, individual tropocollagen molecules condense within the surrounding mucopolysaccharide space to form thin fibrils. Next, these fibrils group together, twisting tightly to form stronger strands known as reticulin fibers. Finally, these reticulin fibers condense again, bundling into a massive, thick, and highly disorganized collagen matrix. This rapidly deployed matrix is composed almost entirely of type 3 collagen. Type 3 collagen possesses an unusual degree of elasticity. Outside of wound healing, it is primarily found in fetal dermis and highly flexible tissues like the aorta. Laying down this elastic, haphazard matrix successfully stabilizes the physical defect, thereby completing the primary biological objective of the granulation phase. With the dense collagen matrix securely established, the hypervascular scaffold that built it is biologically obsolete. The tissue enters the stage of devascularization. The capillary loops begin to undergo widespread atrophy. In the remaining vessels, a process called end arteritis obliterans takes over. The inner cellular lining multiplies inward, proliferating until the central lumen is completely choked off and destroyed. As the blood vessels are systematically obliterated and dense collagen continues to accumulate, the visible tissue loses its vibrant red color and turns pale. Concurrently, the tissue undergoes cicatrization. New nerve fibers grow into the space, bringing rhythmic contractions to the remaining arterioles, alongside newly developing lymphatics. Mast cells briefly arrive, releasing granules derived from the ground substance to trigger tissue hyalinisation before disappearing entirely. The formation of this pale scar does not mark the end of the process. Collagen remodeling within the tissue never stops. Under the influence of tissue collagenase, the haphazardly laid type 3 collagen fibers are actively sheared apart and broken down. They are continuously replaced by type 1 collagen, the much stronger, thicker variant, found in mature skin, in dense tendons, and in solid bone. Even years later, the turnover rate of collagen in scar tissue remains permanently faster than in uninjured skin. A mature scar exists in a highly dynamic state of continuous architectural reweaving, masking an irreversibly altered dermal foundation. In surgery, the ultimate failure is dehiscence, a wound pulling itself apart under mechanical tension. To prevent this structural collapse, surgeons measure a wound's success by its tensile strength, the primary safeguard against disruption. The timeline of human tissue repair operates on two vastly different scales. To the naked eye, a primary surgical cut can appear completely closed in a matter of hours. However, true scar maturation and the acquisition of maximum mechanical integrity takes up to 2 years. Healing is a problem of active structural engineering. The system must clear out biological debris and transition a fragile fibrin clot into a load-bearing, three-dimensional network. Visible surface closure is a deceptive milestone. True clinical healing is defined by this invisible, multi-year biomechanical evolution. 12 hours after an injury occurs, inflammation is established and epithelial migration begins the first stage of rebuilding. In a primary wound, cells bridge the clean margins to complete epithelialization in just a few hours. Secondary healing faces a different geometric challenge, where a wide tissue defect requires a significantly longer cellular migration. As the line of cells extends from the wound margin, the progress slows. Weeks may pass before epithelialization is complete. Around day 4 or 5, a biomechanical mechanism activates to assist this lagging migration, wound contraction. While contraction and granulation tissue are actively filling the defect, true collagen synthesis has not yet begun. During this window, the wound possesses almost zero tensile strength, relying on the blood clot that cements the cut surfaces together. The initial gains in strength come from newly formed blood vessels bridging the gap and the aggregation of globular proteins. Early-stage healing relies on this fragile, temporary scaffolding to seal the defect long before permanent structural integrity can be built. Day 7 is a critical turning point, marked by the appearance of a delicate, fine reticulum of young collagen fibers. From this point forward, the physical properties and burst strength of the entire wound depend on collagen synthesis. This chart shows a significant gain in tensile strength starting around day 5. As the total collagen line spikes, the primary building material arrives. Strength increases rapidly for 17 days, paralleling the massive surge in total wound collagen. Raw collagen production practically halts after day 17, yet the wound's physical strength continues to climb. Secondary wounds complicate this data further. A secondary wound actually contains slightly less total collagen than a primary wound of the same age. Despite this deficit in raw material, these wounds continue to gain burst strength. The gain in integrity comes from effective cross-linking and a superior physical weave of the collagen subunits. Because of this cross-linking, secondary wound collagen exhibits a significantly higher thermal shrinkage temperature than primary wounds of the same age. After day 17, bulk material production ceases to be the driver of tensile strength. Instead, microscopic architectural efficiency takes over. This leads into a prolonged, almost imperceptible gain in tensile strength that stretches across the subsequent 2-year plateau. This long-term phase is driven by dynamic structural remodeling and fibrogenesis. The scar changes its anatomic arrangement by selectively degrading and dissolving non-oriented fibers. Simultaneously, purposefully oriented fibers thicken through the continuous, targeted accretion of collagen particles. The resulting three-dimensional weave laces the wound edges together. This central scar remodels itself to replace granulation tissue and fill the remaining skin defect after the initial contraction is over. Light-stage healing is a subtractive and reorganizational process. The precise alignment of tissue matters more than the raw volume. Looking beyond the microscope, we can see the macroscopic mechanical forces acting on the human body. Langer's lines, the natural, invisible cleavage lines of skin tension, act as the primary vectors for scar integrity. Incisions made parallel to Langer's lines heal faster and yield significantly higher tensile strength. Slicing across Langer's lines causes the wound to gape, which delays the healing process. This biomechanical rule is why transverse abdominal incisions produce stronger scars than longitudinal ones. The ultimate strength of the scar is also dictated by the wound's alignment with the mechanical pull of underlying muscles. Furthermore, a resutured wound heals faster than a primary one because the reparative biochemical processes have already commenced. A surgeon's scalpel must respect the body's pre-existing mechanical vectors, as structural planning dictates the limits of cellular biology. This mechanical model relies on a specific sequence of uninterrupted biochemical conditions. We see the impact of these conditions when examining excess corticosteroid administration. High doses of steroids inhibit granulation tissue formation, keeping fibroblasts small and stalling collagen production in experimental models. This split-screen comparison shows the impact of a vitamin C deficiency, or scurvy. In scurvy, vascular granulation tissue forms, but maturation to collagen does not occur. The wound is held together only by a weak matrix of reticulin fibers. Systemic protein starvation creates a third failure state for the extracellular matrix. Severe starvation delays collagen formation, leading instead to an accumulation of poorly sulfated ground substance. Scar remodeling is an active multi-year optimization of tissue. By managing the vectors of contraction and structural alignment, the body replaces a temporary cellular response with a permanent, load-bearing architecture.
If you found this video informative, please like and share, comment what you would like to see next, and subscribe to the channel to get notified about future informative videos.